Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on the We Thrive podcast, where we share stories from entrepreneurs around the world about how they're creating an impactful legacy. I am your host, Casey Clark, the founder and the Chief Growth Officer of C. Clark Consulting. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing AJ Lawrence, who considers himself a journeyman entrepreneur. He's also an investor and the host of Beyond Eight Figures podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, AJ.
Hi, thank you, Casey. This is really cool to be here today. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. It's our first time having another person that hosts a podcast. So thank you.
Yes, we're a strange brew of people. Yes.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about you.
Okay. I'm an agency person, like yourself. I sold an agency 7 years ago, and I've had a couple of, one in the early 90s, one around the turn of right after the dot-com crash in 2002. I've been involved with digital agencies or digital development from the early days, and I've been lucky to sell a couple of companies. But a few years ago, I realized I was looking to kind of what I was going to do next. I had moved to Spain with my family after selling my last company. I was investing in some startups, and I was trying to make sure I didn't make the same mistakes I had made before. Yes, I sold companies, so I have a very small violin. I get to complain, but as a fellow entrepreneur, so often when you set a goal, you may do really well, but if it isn't that huge goal you've set, it's like, I failed. It's like,
Yeah.
wait a second, and that wasn't that bad. It was just you treated that. I treated it bad myself. So I started looking around at what my next act was going to be. And I realized I was really fascinated by what successful entrepreneurs were doing, not to copy like their business models or whatever, but their mindset and the way they approached being an entrepreneur. I really found myself fascinated having conversations. I was traveling to different business groups all over the place. And then something happened that kind of slashed travel for a bit. And um, lo and behold, I kind of got into a conversation about starting a podcast. And one of the people I was talking to was like, I know a podcast that interviews entrepreneurs that's for sale. Would you be interested in having a conversation? So I ended up having that conversation and going down a bit of a rabbit hole and buying the Beyond Eight Figures podcast, pretty much because it was an excuse for me to regularly talk with cool entrepreneurs from all over the world. It was kind of like, oh, this would be cool.
I love that. That's pretty awesome. So how long have you been doing that podcast?
So just over a year. We just had our 1 year anniversary. Well, bought it just a little more like a year and a quarter, but took us, as everything, it took us a little bit of like we bought it and then like everything kept breaking and nothing was working. And, I was really scared to do it. And then finally we got going and, somewhere around 40, 50 episodes, I stopped. Well, I still swallow my butterflies at the beginning, like I just did here, but like I stopped like sweating right at the beginning of each episode.
That is too funny. I think you bring up a great point, though. I mean, it's like as an entrepreneur, especially when you're in front of people, we're human. It doesn't matter if you sold 15 different companies, like we still have those same
Yeah.
insecurities and get the butterflies and all that stuff.
Yeah. And I almost find it's because I've done things already. Sometimes I find myself in that, the fake expert trap. Oh, I've done things well before, so therefore I can't do things poorly again, ever again in my life. And I'm like, okay, but that kind of is like how I do everything, whenever I start something new. So, okay, am I not going to ever do anything new? Conversations inside my head.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's that, okay, it's going to happen. It will probably sound dopey, but let's see what we can find. What value can we find in this experience? So, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm very curious to know, what exactly does thriving mean to you?
Well, I've been thinking about, because I love, one of the things I've been finding from a lot of the conversations with entrepreneurs who are successful in their entrepreneurial efforts is a sort of, that mission driven, or they have a guiding, direction. Now, it's not the mission statement that, that lovely company thing you would get and then everyone would have to memorize and then no one ever talk about again. But like, you know, I really found it fascinating that these entrepreneurs did. So, like, for me, a lot of this came into, when I started looking at concepts like thriving, was what did it mean to actually do the things that I wanted to do? And that sounds really simplistic, but when you're running a business, you kind of sometimes get pushed all over the place. Yeah,
Mhm.
you're the boss, you're all over, but I know in my last company, I sold on the way down. Once again, a very, very small violin I get to play. Um, but it wasn't what I wanted. It was what sort of had to happen.
Mhm.
And, great. I did get very lucky. I had a mid 7-figure exit and all that, but it wasn't this. So now when I look at what thriving, I look at it as being able to create the type of entrepreneurial experience that I want. It to me is being deliberate in my efforts. It's being, focused and consistently driving value in
Mhm.
these things that we are trying to do. To
Yeah.
me, that's thriving. If you're doing that, yeah, the rest of it kind of takes care of itself in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like you've probably thought about this a lot and in depth,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna dig a little deeper.
Yes,
So
please. Yeah, because I'm take me where you like. You
so
lead.
if you're like, when you wake up in the morning, what would you love your typical day to look like as an entrepreneur?
Well, having three, two teenagers and one soon to be a teenager.
Oh, life is busy.
Yeah, what I want sometimes is not exactly, you know, but that is part of the fun. So for me, a lot of this is my perfect day really does come down into that, like the moment of getting up before everyone. It's quiet. I let the rabbit out of its hutch because, yes, yeah, um, we have two dogs, three kids, a rabbit, just pure insanity. I take the lithium pills, with every cup of coffee, but it's that moment of just quiet to get things ready for when they come, then kind of getting them off that little burst of sometimes hilarity, a lot of times grumpiness, getting them, up, fed, gone. For me, that moving into the day with, making sure that my team that they feel like they have what they want to do, that they have the resources and the support to achieve the things that we've discussed and they want to do, given the different things. And then, for me, what I love is when I can then start exploring around, either our clients or concepts around the podcast that can, that create more value. And once again, it gets that, like, what's mission driven. It's for me, it's that, like, okay, what can we do that resonates a little bit more, that gets that little bit more of like, oh yeah, from an audience member, or because we also do growth plan. In one of my other businesses is, we do analytical structure and growth plans. No work. We just tell you, if you have the right tools, and what you should do and find you the partners. And then we just, other than telling you if it's working, we disappear. So it's like, okay, can we make this even more valuable? What can we do? Are our clients using this? You tell them, it's that lovely thing. If you lead them, will they actually do it? How do you make sure? Yeah,
That's a whole
yeah.
different
I
story.
saw. I was going through your. I'm like, oh yeah, you get a lot of this craziness. Yeah, you live this life. So it's like that to me is when a day is really great. The reality is it's dog gets sick because they found a chocolate bag. It's, grumpy partner because they have, some crazy travel plans and you have to coordinate, or you have something and they want, and you're like coordinating. The kids, are stressed from exams and this and that. And, we're trying to buy a house from, across the world. And, and that all amplifies, and you kind of get into that, like, just get me through the day and let me just hit those, pieces. But, what can I do to kind of consistently move myself back into that type of day? So,
Yeah.
I don't really hit it that often because life, but it is that, like, a really great day is that moment into, like, okay, do we have the right step, the right blocks? Are they being hit? Great. Then from there, the rest of my time is me spent on what can we do that's cooler, better, more fun.
Yes. Definitely on the same page with you on that one. So,
Yeah.
what are some obstacles that kind of stick out for you as you've been along this journey?
Like, one of the things when my last company, we grew quickly for, 4 or 5 years and then really grew. So it was like, oh, somewhere around 3.5, 4 million. We went from like, oh my God, we're growing and this is really cool, but like, is everything working? To like, oh my God, we have a new $1 million client. And then like a $2 million, what? That, yeah, and like just hire everyone and all this stuff. The pieces that, I was trying to do, the type of work, the type of focus on the data and sort of the strategy, that kind of fell aside to, yes, we were saying it, but more of just to service the revenue gods. It's a very tough dance. And you can almost go down the list of things you're not supposed to do. Don't hire without a purpose. Don't get ahead of your revenue cycle, from your cost structure. Didn't bring in good, support, management team. I was still pretty much doing that with some fractional people along the side, managing everything. Still kept everything to like what I called management by walking, which is fine when you're 15-ish people. That gets a little tight there. But when you're at like 35, 40 people, oh, guess what? You lose your entire week to just saying hello to everyone. Increased my drinking, sleep disappeared. I started tracking my sleep as things started getting bad. I was like, oh, I'm averaging 4.5 hours. Might have a problem here.
Yeah.
You know, uh, all the things, you're not supposed to do, I did. Like I said, I got lucky, to still be able to get something, basically catch something on the way down. But it's these things of like losing the concept of what I wanted to do
Mhm.
and then not keeping a type of structure for myself. I've always been the bright, shiny object person. This just made it infinite. Let the ego get in because, all of a sudden people are like, oh, you're a big company or this. And 99.9% of the people saying that are people trying to sell you things. But, you don't always realize that when it first
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, all these people are saying cool things. Well, that's funny. They just asked if I want in on this deal and they just want to, it's like, oh, yeah. Okay. What I try now, and this is, sort of my call beyond 8 figures, my therapy, is what is being a deliberate entrepreneur. It's like understanding. I try and work on understanding what we're trying to do.
Mhm.
What does that mean? There's smart, there's arg, whatever. It doesn't matter the metric structure or the measurement structure you take, but are you actually using a measurement structure and to track your progress? Okay, do I have the right tools? Do I have the right processes in place to actually even do that? Forget the processes to run the company. Do I have the processes in place to even look at the data instead of just doing what I always called like the everyday walk in and check the bank accounts? Okay, all those things you do when you're early. It's like, okay, let's move past that. What can I do to practice getting better at this? Setting my goals, tracking my pieces. What are those things that lead to the measurements that or the executions that I'm trying to get to? So
Yeah.
that's what a lot of what Beyond 8 Figures has been for me. It's like, okay, let's talk with these people. Like you have some amazing guest hosts coming through. Your friend who's the data scientist, I thought was great. I apologize for not remembering her name.
Catherine Barton.
Yes.
Hilarious.
Yes. I mean, that was a great episode. It's like you get to talk to such great entrepreneur, such great people. And that was, that's the same for me. It's like, okay, what can I learn from them? Or as I jokingly say, what can I steal from them? Because to me, stealing is when you find something you think is really, really good and you then bring it into your environment and change it to what works for you, not copy. Steal, don't copy. So it's like, oh, are the way they're looking, the way they decided to bring on a partner, or the way they decided on their process for funding or selling, or the million things that as a business person, you're like, how do I do X to the nth degree to the to the unlimited thing? My to-do list kind of looks like a really bad calculation of infinite choices. There's so much great stuff, but how can I make sure that I'm just not overwhelmed by the unlimited choices of stuff to be done?
Yeah. So what are some of the resources that you've used to really keep your focus on what matters?
I've stolen, a little bit of from like the EOS Rock Quarterly. I mean, I think there's a bunch of people who sort of their goal planning, they're all within, what I basically say, a sigma of difference between that a 3, 5, 10-year goal plan with that sort of annual to then quarterly to monthly to weekly, daily type thing. I suck at, for me, it's like the big stuff is really easy. Then that like annual stuff is good because I usually hit it, but never the way I thought I would. So it's like, for me, it's trying to be more committed to those cycles. It's like, okay, these are things that are a type of thing. Maybe sales is sort of that weekly conversation, but then like a quarterly dive, or monthly, whatever, depending on, your company, like trying to create that cadence. So for me, I always found I could do daily and I could do big stuff. It was that quarter by quarter that it was like, oh, wait, I said I was going to do this. 3 days before the end of the quarter. Okay.
Let me squeeze that in here.
Yeah. So trying to work on that. So that's my broad thing. But for me, a lot of it is finding other entrepreneurs, finding other people and hearing how they deal with it. I always love when you talk to someone and within a couple of sentences, you don't know the specifics of what they do, but because you know the general area of what they're talking about, they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And those are the people I love to have conversations with the most in, the various fields I'm involved in, because it's like, oh, wait, we can geek out. We can, So for me, it's talking to those people really good. And then I am not a strong memorizer of proper nouns, but one of the things I always love is I love data collection and correlation. I love finding pieces things. So for my third thing, so it's like, I always like to have like these maps. And like I said, I'm still really working, or the mid tuning. Doesn't sound right, but I guess that is,
why not?
month to quarter to year type of space. That's something I really do need a lot of work in. Then it's this idea of constantly talking with interesting people to get as much sort of energy and focus and just like, wow. And partially if they can do it, then there's probably I can do. It's that a lot of times it's like, I can't do something. Oh, wait, you did that? Okay, I think I can do that. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. Trying to teach my kids that. And they're like, I can't do that. I'm like, there's 20 people doing it right now. Don't worry. You can. You'll probably fall, but you'll get it. And then last, I read, RSS feeds, newsletters. I swallow huge amounts of data. I have 152 tabs, which is probably why my video was being so funky earlier today when we started chatting. I love following different concepts and exploring and, things that are like just outside of what we do to a different space, or maybe a new area or a different way of looking at things. Because then it's like, there's usually something where because so often in my own space or in spaces of people, we get caught up in our own vocabulary. This is the way it's done, all this. And then all of a sudden someone just a little bit out there is doing, and you're like, you can't do that, except it's working. So wait, what? Why aren't you doing X, Y, or Z? And they're like, what's X, Y, or Z? It's like, okay, maybe that's why you're not doing X, Y. It's like, oh, okay, maybe we can do this, or combine them this way, or there's so many areas. And then for me, it's bringing it back to entrepreneurs, having for other entrepreneurs, or for businesses, since you and I are both marketer. It's like, so other ways that businesses can have value,
Mm.
like, oh, how can you use a tool to grow? How can you grow the resources of your team, your understanding, the cost, whatever, to actually gain value of this? Because a lot of times, it's like, oh, you need to do X. Well, how do I do X? Well, let's go see if we can find someone else doing it in a way that could work, and kind of, you know, small, big, medium, whatever, come into their environment. So I love finding those. Those
Yeah,
are the
I
three things.
can. So I have to ask, are you one
Yeah.
of those that either has like a huge whiteboard or they have even the walls that you can write on and like puts all the data all over the place?
I do, but it's now mostly in a really horrible combination of Notion, like individual Notion, thing, rather than like connected. And I know people who have everything really beautiful and connecting and all that. I'm like, no, I just kind of throw a different idea. Or I really do so much in Apple's notes. I literally have like 82 projects, and each one probably has like 30, 40. Like, oh, hey, here's a cool idea and this and that. And so I'm constantly pulling something together and trying to rearrange it. Hey, if they say this, maybe it could be re-put this way, or wow, that's a whole different industry, but this, or hey, what's this stupid crypto thing that I have no idea about? Yeah. So I mean, for me, that's getting back to then that practice of, okay, there's so many things. I get fascinated by so many things. So moving back to like, okay, these are the things we're working on. These are
Mhm.
the things, I'm trying to achieve for the team, for my clients, for my long-term goals. Okay, sit there. But even then, I sometimes go down a rabbit hole. Like, I'm out looking to buy marketing firms, and the whole acquisition space is, there's like a whole nother, like multiple layers of like vocabulary. When I sold, it was like I talked with like one investment bank and a couple of people from some of the holding agencies. And then it was like a private equity guy who came around and backed one of my ex-employees. So it was like, okay, this has gotten so much more complex. There's so many more choices now. So trying to keep based upon what's going to create value, not everything cool.
Yeah. So when you think of everything cool and the value, what exactly does a legacy look like to you?
So it's funny because that word legacy is so, you know, I like asking people that also. And then like that kind of like, well, I don't want my name on a building. It's like, well, no, I think it really starts kind of where a lot of like the core focus of everything I do in my life, as I jokingly said, is my kids. That is my whole sort of, I had success before I was a parent, but it was more because, I was curious. It wasn't the drive that I see in successful entrepreneurs and others, and that focus and that consistent ongoing thing. It never mattered to me because, back before I was a father, I always felt I can, so what? I'm rice and beans or I'm flying to Paris. It's same. And then you have children, and then you're like, okay. So for me, it kind of comes from, am I giving them, it's not that I'm giving them what they need, everything they need. am I giving them the tools and the environment to allow them to become the people that they would like to become? Can
Mm-hmm.
they, can I help them, but not, not directly take care of them? That fine line. So for me, my own legacy starts there. I like, and I've never done this deliberately, but I like that so many of my ex-employees have gone on to run their own companies. I have a handful of won the Inc. 500. I actually have two guys who've gone public, and that was really weird.
Wow.
And they, it was like, wait, you're on like NASDAQ serious big? It's like, okay, I guess there was a reason why well, that was 12 years afterwards, but still, you see things and you're like, that is so cool. So, I like when I hire someone or work with someone to kind of work on a concept or a different business or for a client. And I find that sort of curiosity or that sort of drive to create something more themselves. And it's always like, I guess everyone's a little different, but for me, it's always curiosity driven,
Yeah.
finding that and then that ability to be like, maybe if I do this, this, and this, and being willing for it not to work, but then keep doing. I love that. And I love finding people who, go on and do their own businesses. So
Yeah.
those
Good.
are the two things
Good.
for me. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, if you could give anyone who's just starting out in business a golden nugget of advice, what would it be?
Um, well, when you're just starting off, you know, the thing is be willing for it to just blow up. It's in all likelihood going to go wrong. Sorry, that's bad, but it's okay because that's where you're going to then learn your ability to do something a little more interesting.
Hmm.
And, as I kind of, given that I failed so many times, it was like, oh, wait, we all know about the entrepreneurs who like woke up one day and kind of wrote, some hot or not thing, and then all of a sudden turned it around to like the Facebook, and then all of a sudden, hundreds of
Yeah.
billions. But the reality is, most successful entrepreneurs really have multiple efforts of varying degrees of limited success to failure in their past.
Mhm.
And, when you go on this journey, it's painful, especially that failure. I mean, I remember my first business, blowing up and pretty much not leaving my room for 3 months. It was like, it's really kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they become your baby. Like you
Yeah.
want them to succeed.
Be ready for that. And, it's sort of, you hear this with like, how to, mindfulness and stuff. Lean into that because that really is when you can kind of get past that. That's the area that's really going to take you to that next level.
Mhm.
But to me, yeah, I always kind of jokingly said, if you're a geek and you've read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, um,
I've never even heard of that.
oh my God. All right. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is like the science fiction humor trilogy. Douglas Adams wrote the 5 books of the trilogy. So therefore you're already kind of getting the absurdity of it. And it's totally tongue in cheek, totally just insane humor. It's humor driven, just really just silliness. But in, I believe, the second or third book, there's this planet where people learn to fly, and it's really simple. And this is what I tell people, and success is like, if you want to fly, you throw yourself at the ground and you miss.
Okay.
And the reality is the only way to miss is to not think about hitting the ground. That's the whole trick is, then after a page of like, hey, just throw yourself at the ground and miss, and everyone he then kind of, well, the trick is, you can't be thinking of like, "Ooh, that's going to hit," or this, or "Ooh," or, this. You have to be willing for it just to happen and kind of do. So for me, starting off business is just like, look, there are some great people. Find, lean methodology, or, there are now a gazillion people. Find something that resonates with you, a structure, if that's kind of, though I do happen to find that most entrepreneurs that do kind of break through that first barrier and get to that upper 6, 7 figures really kind of do it by force of will and luck, and then all of a sudden kind of want to put structures in place. It's like, it's working. Um, what do I do now? I can feed myself. This is amazing. So when you're starting off, there are people who give you great advice on do X, do Y, do Z. For me, it's more just be prepared for it not to work, because that's really going to be when the fun starts happening. If
Okay.
you can accept that, if you can kind of accept it, then that next step is when it really gets to be interesting.
Yeah, a lot of growth a lot of growing pains, essentially. I mean,
Yeah.
oh,
That's the thing. No one ever said, they talk about big failure. They don't talk about the ongoing, like, failure of
yeah,
it.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely appreciate that different outlook. I mean, most
Mhm.
people, it's all like sunshine and rainbows. And then, you're like, no, you're going to fail and it's okay.
But I've dedicated my life to being an entrepreneur. I've had bursts where I have worked for other people, but the reality is it is a great life choice. It just, you're off center from the rest of society. There's good things from that, but like, like a lot of things, you watch people who don't follow the norms, and, we're not talking like purple hair, though, if that's what you want, fine. But, we are talking like, everyone's doing this, or 90% of the people you're going to know in your regular life are going to be doing 9 to 5 or whatever variation COVID has now given us. And you're going to be doing 24/7.
Hmm.
But it's fun. You get other things.
Yeah,
Yeah. There are other benefits to this.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
sure.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
I
That's the fun.
really wouldn't. Yeah. So how can people find you and listen to your podcast?
So beyond8figures.com, please come check it out. Sign up for our newsletter. That way, whenever we have some cool entrepreneur, they're much more interesting than me. I promise everyone. Um, you know, you can find out. We also have Beyond Eight Figures at Beyond Eight Figures on Twitter, Instagram. I'm at AJ Lawrence on Twitter. You can kind of, I talk about fancy cocktails and different parts of being an entrepreneur. That's the things I like. Yeah, on Twitter, at least. That's because I'm not allowed to talk about my kids. They've stopped me from posting any information. I've been banned. I'm allowed one picture per vacation on Instagram, but that's about it.
Oh,
Um,
that's funny.
yeah, teenagers. But, and then LinkedIn, AJ Lawrence. So please, feel free to reach out. I would, anything. It's always fun to talk to other people in the base, in the biz, and other entrepreneurs and other business people. It's always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being on with me today, and
Uh,
definitely brought a lot of really good insights. And it's always nice to be able to know that someone can speak the same language, because entrepreneurship is one thing, and then you have agency life that's like a whole different thing.
Agency life. I mean, it's so much fun, and you can do so much, but at the same time, it really is this, and depending on your model, I love the caveat, true consultant, I can caveat everything beyond belief, but it depends on this data set or this. But it's like trying to build something so you can bring the smartest people possible to help your clients in the smartest way possible while charging appropriate enough. And, it's like, Oh, there's only a few thousand billion things going on to make sure it works. So yes,
Yeah.
I was really excited to, also to, because I am moving, to the DC area, so I'll be just probably 99% likely I'll be over on the Virginia side, not Maryland, but my brother's over in Rockville, so not that far from you. Um, I thought that was really cool, and I was like, wow. And I like how you run your agency, so, or what I can see of how you run your agency.
Well, I
I thought that was
appreciate
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll have to meet up for some fancy cocktails.
Yes, there is, depending on what kind of direction. I like dark bitter combinations. There's one of the top, I think number 7 in the country is in DC, something saloon. It's a bourbon, but bourbon cocktail, place. So
Oh,
definitely on my list. We'll have a conversation or two. Yeah, we'll have to have multiple conversations
yeah,
at
I'm
this.
open to try some beverages.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate it, and absolutely keep in touch, and we'll be sharing you on all podcast channels,
Yay.
as well as YouTube and Instagram, LinkedIn,
Sweet.
Facebook. Yeah. So thank you again for joining us.
Cool, Casey. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Good. And I'd also like to thank our music sponsor, Stephen Lamar Moore, who produced the music for our podcast. So thank you all for listening and enjoy your day.